All right, viewers, again, you are welcome again into our next episode of the American War of Independence. We are going to be looking at how taxation policies contributed to the American War of Independence. I earlier said in the other episode that at the end of the 7 Years' War that took place from 1756 to 1763, where the British defeated France and Spain to liberate the 13 colonies from the threat that was posed by France and Spain in the north of America, in the west, and in the south. The British incurred a huge debt of £130 million. So the British felt that this debt they have incurred in the 7 Years' War, it was because they were fighting to save the 13 colonies from the threat posed by France and Spain. And so, for the British, the Americans or the 13 colonies, they needed to give their own contribution in the debt or in the money the British has incurred in fighting against France and Spain. And to do this, or to force the 13 colonies to pay this debt, the British started putting taxation policies in the British Parliament against the 13 colonies. They put numerous taxes against the 13 colonies, which we are going to look at some of the taxes that the British in their Parliament, where the 13 colonies were not even represented, they were putting this act on the 13 colonies on how they are going to pay taxes. This act alienated or antagonized the 13 colonies, and they came out with a slogan, "No taxation without representation," in quotes, which means that the 13 colonies were crying that they shouldn't be taxed in the British Parliament when they are not represented in the British Parliament to even fight, to cry against these taxes. These were the taxes that were put in place by the British in their Parliament against the 13 colonies. We have the first one, Trade and Navigation Act from 1651 and 1660. According to the Trade and Navigation Act, which was passed in the British Parliament, the act made it clear that only ships manufactured in Britain should trade between Britain and the 13 colonies. That is, any other ship that was not produced in Britain or manufactured in Britain was not having the right to trade between Britain and the 13 colonies. This was not well welcomed by the members of the 13 American colonies. They were not happy with this Trade and Navigation Act. As if that was not enough, in the year 1764, the British put in another act in their Parliament, which was called the Sugar Act of 1764. The Sugar Act came and replaces what was called the Molasses Act. The Molasses Act of 1733. It came to replace the Molasses Act. And according to this Sugar Act that was put in place in the British Parliament, the British asked the 13 colonies that they should import rum only from Britain. Rum was a substance which was used in producing non-alcoholic drinks. So, with this act, the British asked their military officials in the 13 colonies to frequently make sure that the act was put in place and respected by the citizens in the 13 colonies. The people in the 13 colonies were not happy. Still in that same year, the British passed another act called the Currency Act of 1764. According to the Currency Act, the British made it clear that the 13 territories or British North American colonies, they were not supposed to produce paper money or currency. As again, the Currency Act also made a gold and silver coin very scarce in the 13 colonies. This was in order to bring down the economy of the 13 colonies. This was not welcomed by the members of the 13 colonies, and they stood against this act. In the year 1765, the British Parliament passed another act called the Stamp Act, which was the most hated act of Parliament that was passed against the 13 colonies. This act was hated by the members of the 13 colonies. The British put in the Stamp Act on 54 different articles. According to the Stamp Act, the American citizens were to make sure that they put stamps on how many articles? 54 different articles, like journals, almanac, newspaper, licenses, birth certificate, among other items. This act fell mostly on printers and lawyers. The people in America were not happy. The British, according to them, they have imposed the Stamp Act with the intention that they needed to raise £1 million, which was to be used for protection, security, and the defense of the 13 colonies. With this act, the people in the 13 colonies alienated or hated the Stamp Act so much because it affected almost all the sectors in America. And with this, the day the act was passed in the Parliament, all the American citizens wore black dresses and they moved in the streets of their various states to protest against this Stamp Act. The women formed a wing called Daughters of Liberty, while the men formed another wing called Sons of Liberty, just to protest against the Stamp Act. And the Stamp Act was being protested by the American citizens. The British went on in 1766 and put what was called the Declaration Act. According to the Declaration Act, it was just in confirmation that the British has the right and power to levy taxes on the 13 colonies. And this act make the people to be instantly annoyed against the British. The British in 1767 passed an act called the Townshend Act. The Townshend Act was passed with the purpose of raising £40,000 to pay the colonial army, and this act was levied on paints, glasses, and wines. These were the 4 items where the Townshend Act was levied on them. I said tea, wine, paints, and glasses, so as to raise £400,000 to pay the colonial army. With all these acts that were passed in the British Parliament without any representative of the 13 colonies in the British colony, the members of the 13 colonies became annoyed and they rose against the British with the policy of no taxation without representation. In quote, in the GCA, if this question is asked, quotation, no taxation without representation. How is this assertion in regard to the American War of Independence? Your MP1, you are elaborating on the different tax policies that were put in place by Britain to raise £130 million to repay the debt she incurred during the 7 Years' War, which means we are going to explain on the 7 Years' War that was fought between Britain against France and Spain, and at the end of the war, and we said the war started from 1756 to 1763, the British incurred this amount, and when they incurred this amount, they needed to pay back, and to pay back they needed to include the 13 colonies in contributing their own quota in paying the amount, and to do so they have to come out with these taxation policies that caused the citizens in the 13 colonies to be annoyed, and they came up now with this slogan, no taxation without representation. You explain that in your MP1 and MP2. Was it only no taxation without representation, or the taxation policies imposed by the British in their parliament against the 13 colonies that caused the American War of Independence? No, there were other factors that contributed to the American War of Independence that will feature now in your MP2 of the question. That is how this question will be answered. Thank you for watching our episode on the American War of Independence. More will be coming up on the other causes of the American War of Independence, the cause of the American War of Independence, why the British were finally defeated, and the consequences or the impact of the American War of Independence before we round up the topic. Thank you so much for watching Benjamin Academy.